bizarre, man. After I've kind of talked about this Upwork strategy with Replit, I'm getting DMs of people who are like, dude, I just sold an app for $8,000. Someone DM me like, I'm about to finish one for $30,000. And I'm like, dude, what? And I'll like tweet about those kinds of things and they're unbelievable. But I think it just points to if you're in the right place and you have good ideas and you find a burning hot problem, you can make an app that addresses that and sell it in 2 days. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing now and building like custom apps for business owners, I would be spinning up landing pages for like every local business and then sending them like looms or calling them and saying, hey, I made this, because you can just update all of their business websites and make them so much better, just using something like Replit to quickly make a landing page. It's nuts. It's just like amazing how being able to dictate into software, right? Turn your words and ideas into a functioning code. It's amazing how it unlocks things. The other day, I was fiddling with one page like proposal for a client in like Figma that I wanted to be pretty, and I'm dragging stuff around and I got to center this and resize this, and I was like, wait, code would do this automatically because everything's responsive and dynamic. So I went into Replit and I was like, hey, turn this into a one-page proposal and put it on my agency website, and it did it in like 5 minutes. And so I was able to code and deploy a new web page quicker than I was able to drag and drop and create a PDF.
Hey, Billy, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Manny, how's it going?
Great to have you here. I think a good place to start off is I'm wondering if you can talk to me a little bit about your background, your journey, and how you got started with Replit.
Yeah, man. I always tell people that I don't have a CS degree. I actually studied public policy, so I'm always self-taught coding. Just been tinkering, curious about the internet and building like tools and cool apps, and just kind of all of my learning just accelerated and like compounded once like AI started becoming a thing. And so really, I run a marketing agency beside my app agency, and I started that first. And so really I would build, custom like Google app scripts to help my clients like with internal stuff. Even when I had like a real consulting job, I was always like teaching myself to like VBA code to like automate things in Excel, because yeah, coding is just such a powerful tool. And I'm one of those guys, I always look at things and I'm like, how can we automate this? Like we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be spending time on this. And then ChatGPT came around and I'm pasting, entire pieces of code into entire documents and telling it like, hey, edit this whole thing, give me the whole code back, just straining it to use all its tokens. And then I would paste that in and manually kind of, I don't think Cursor existed, or I don't know if I knew about anything like Cursor or Copilot or Reddit at the time. Probably, I guess 3 years ago. And then I kind of bumped into Cursor, and that was like a 0 to 1 moment for me of being able to quickly kind of spin up apps and edit stuff. And then Replit came along. I've probably been using Replit for like 5 or 6 months now. And that was like a 1 to 10 moment for me where I'm like, holy cow, like I'm able to iterate so fast and actually like create these ideas I've had in my head. And so I made, I don't know, 45 or 50 apps in Replit, which is insane. Like looking back on it, like I feel like no one else, not many people would think to do that. I wasn't even thinking to do it. I was just obsessed, just staying up late. I got to figure out how to do this. Like, let me make this idea. And they're all not, most of them aren't like deployed or like public apps or anything, but I would just get them to like where they're 85% of the functionality that I wanted and be like, okay, I'm not going to market this. Like, I don't know if anyone wants this beside me. Let's move on to the next one and learn something new. And then, yeah, kind of just started getting more confident using Replit to use for like internal tooling for my marketing clients. And then one day was kind of looking at a job on Upwork, and I was like, I could just make this guy an app instead of building with no code tools like he's asking. And so I did a side by side with like a Replit example and a like a no code example in Airtable, and he liked the Replit version better. And then yeah, here we are. We're off to the races. People like that story on YouTube and stuff, and I kind of parlayed that into starting my own app agency, stupid simple apps. I had to hire people because so many people are like breaking down my door, like, can you help me build this idea? Like, you seem like you're easy to work with because you don't have a background in CS like me. Like, you can speak like the language of vibe coding, I guess, if there's not a better word for it. So now, yeah, I have a team of engineers, and we build apps for really, like business owners and startups.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a similar story as well. I started my career in finance. I studied finance in college, but then in my first role at an investment shop, I just felt like one of the better ways to ingratiate myself with some of the more senior guys was to automate all of their tedious tasks.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of reporting in investment management and finance where like you have to get a whole bunch of data sets, clean them up, put together charts, and these guys that had been there for a while were all doing it manually, and it was taking them like forever. And I said, like, hey, like, I'm happy to step in and automate this for you. And if you tell me about markets and how to get ahead in my career. And that was my impetus for getting a little bit more technical. But that was some time ago. And I'm really excited for people today to make that similar jump because of the AI tools that are available now to streamline that. To your point, just on the educational front, if you can sit in front of an AI assistant and just ask questions and like make progress and have it seed some code for you, that is such an accelerant to learning these things.
Yeah, and you don't even need to make your own like full robust app to make a difference. Like you can make Google App scripts or VBA automations to automate your spreadsheets, like you said, using ChatGPT, and it's like candy. It's so easy, right? It's so good.
That's a great point. Like, yeah, if you're doing VBA stuff, Google App Scripts, I just recently put together a new Chrome extension
Nice.
in Replit. Something easy, like for example, I want to be able to 4x certain videos on YouTube. So I just went on to
Oh,
Replit and I said, like, hey, build me a Chrome extension that does this, and I did some styling. And it looks great. I use it every day. It's
ha-
so cool. But to your point, it's like it doesn't have to be a standalone application, but you can build stuff in Replit and then port it over to say more traditional or legacy applications like Chrome.
so dude, that's funny because I'm with a buddy later doing another one of these hackathons where I built something in Replit and he built something in a different one, and he wants to make a Chrome extension. And I've made Chrome extension in the past, and I was like, I think that's going to be hard for like an hour show. But then I search it, and I'm like, oh, Replit has a Google Chrome template. Like maybe this is just easy now, and it kind of blew my mind. So that's good to hear, man. That's awesome. Chrome extensions are such a useful. I think the constraints are really useful exercise for people because they force you to just focus on like one feature and make it do that one thing really well instead of thinking, oh, I need an app that does this, this, and this. And what if they need this? It forces you to be a good engineer and be like, I want this one feature that works and does this job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my suggestions to people just getting started with vibe coding is you don't have to go all out and build a whole app or a whole workflow. Just look at for one small
In
feature
fact, you
that might
shouldn't,
make
I
it.
would say. You
Yeah,
should not.
right. You're gonna get, yeah, especially starting off,
Yeah.
or even on a new project. Like you might want to start with the smallest, most desirable feature, build that out, and then build on top of that.
Yep.
But like, yeah, just like if you're looking for ideas, like what would you like on an application? Like, I can even envision like I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, like a Chrome extension that automatically like pulls the details from someone's LinkedIn profile, maybe does some research on them, maybe even drafts like a welcome message for them or something to that effect. So there are a bunch of those little features that would just like make your life a whole
Yeah.
much easier, and you can build a lot of this stuff. At least try it out in Replit.
And the great thing about where we are with like AI coding now is the opportunity cost of making these is lower and lower. So I think where a lot of people get caught up is like with the LinkedIn thing, they might think, oh, well, something already exists that does that. I shouldn't do that. Well, the opportunity cost of building it is lower. So just build it and use it and just make your own flavor of it, and maybe other people will like it.
It's likely gonna save you in the long run, right? Because maybe you find something, but there's a $5, $10 monthly subscription that you have to cough up. But then to your point, the opportunity to make it wholly your own and super customizable
Yep.
for you. Like if I go out and I say, hey, I want this Chrome extension that does like 5x on video streams, and like I want these settings and I want to be able to do all these things. Like that's going to be hard for me to find. And even if I find it, like there might be a growing list of features that I want to add to that I would just rather like build out myself and host myself because it's so
Yep.
easy to do now.
I mean, it's really like paradigm shifting all this because it's the democratization of software is kind of rolling us back to like what computers were supposed to be when they're first made, right? you're supposed to be making your own applications and interfaces. And we kind of drifted away with that with, big SaaS companies and operating systems that put you in guardrails. And so this everyone being able to code now is kind of undoing that and bringing us back to where I think like computing should be headed.
I want to go back to a point you made earlier. You said that with Cursor, it 10x your ability to learn, and then with Replit, it 100x it. Can you tell me what was it about Replit that really helped you accelerate your learning process or your ability to turn out apps?
Yeah, the main thing is just the whole environment being in the cloud, it being a little opinionated about how to build an app every time, and not having to deal with installing software packages on my local computer. Um, when I'm, when you're iterating and trying to learn fast and prototype quickly, like I feel like it slows me down to have to install a bunch of packages, boot up a new React app locally, do all this, configure stuff, and Replit just abstracts that away. Um, but at the same time, it's important to start with coding yourself a little bit and using a local editor just to understand like the steps that you're skipping, I think. So I kind of accidentally, because I was learning with like the tools as they grew and got better, I kind of went through like the harder steps. Um, but I think maybe like AI is improving so much that you won't even need to understand that stuff. But I still think it's important.
100%. I just think back to when I was first learning to code. Those first steps of you have to download your VS Code, your IDE. Then you have to set up your own containers with Conda. And then you have to download Python. And then you have to download all these additional packages. There's so much upfront work before you actually get to the fun part of
Mhm.
actually coding something. And then you find out you have, like, the wrong configuration, and it's just so much friction. Well, at least there was.
Yeah.
There's so much friction up front before you get to those first initial, like, hello world type of examples. And with Replit, that's, like, all gone. Like, "Oh, I want a Python kernel, spin it up. Okay, boom, I'm immediately in my hello world example, and I'm hacking away."
Right. And locally, like, and maybe this is me being like a non-standard computer scientist, but like you just like bang your head against the wall locally trying to fix something, and then realize like, oh, I had another Docker container open that I forgot from yesterday, or like I need to update my OS, and it just fixes stuff, and then you feel like you've blown a whole day. And when you code in the cloud with like Replit, it just you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So that was really what kind of, as you said, 100x I think my like building. I kind of went from like the progression would be just with like Chat GPT and manually pasting code in, then putting it back and saying, hey, this didn't work, change the code again. Um, that was kind of, I don't know, I would kind of tinker with like an app for like a week or two or like 3 weeks. And then once I started using like a cursor or like a windsurf locally, that kind of, you know, made it so that I can make like a prototype in like maybe like a day or two, and then kind of hack away at it to kind of finish it up. And then Replit is just like nuts because even before like Agent V2, which is like the new souped up, really good, like fast Replit agent, even with the first agent, you can spin stuff up in minutes and be like working on features uh, in 10 minutes. And so I would make an app and then just make it the same way, but with something like slightly different. And I could just iterate and like compound that learning, right? I know like making mistakes is important, but like once you make the mistake once, like like you don't need to keep banging your head against the wall like trying to fix it, right? And so I just compounded the learning so much.
Yeah, you just triggered something for me. I think I was in the same boat as you, where I was leveraging ChatGPT and Claude, and I was constantly putting my code chunks into Claude, getting the response, and then putting that back into my IDE and
Yeah,
going back and forth.
exactly.
And when Replit put AI Assistant on its platform, so that it automatically had access to all of my files and all the code, that was just so convenient. It's like having like Claude there embedded in your code base, so you don't have to link to anything or copy paste anything. It's just right there. And so that was like really helpful, just kind of copy pasting thing. But then, the ability for AI assistant, now AI agent, to automatically change my code base and tell me like, oh, I'm going to make these changes. Do you approve them? Yes or no? like that again, like really reduced the friction of leveraging these AI tools for my coding projects.
And that made me think the way Replit does Git is amazing. It writes commit messages for you and it does them for you. And that is a thing that in local, traditional developing, like I know it's the best practice and it's what you're supposed to do and it's good. It slows you down. But a lot of times, I don't want to be writing a commit message every time I tweak something, but I should. And Replit just does that for you, and I find it like super useful.
And super important for people just getting started with coding or that are vibe coding, because if you don't like a change, the ability to go back really fast to a previous instant is super helpful. You almost have like a control Z on everything that you're doing. And when you're new to the space and you're kind of exploring, that control Z functionality is like a really big safety net for you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard to do. It's hard to kind of understand how to do it with Git, like in your terminal correctly every time. Even I struggle with it sometimes.
Can you tell me a little bit about your process when you get started with a new client?
Yep.
Walk me through some of the initial steps that you're taking in terms of scoping out a project and prototyping a project. How does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, usually we're trying to get to like a requirement stock that just has all of what their feature requirements and everything are. And so uh, basically we take like we do like a discovery call and then we ingest it and we go through and write what we think the requirements are and we scope those kind of broadly, like this is going to take this many hours. And then we go back to the client, we're like, is this right, does this make sense? And then they make revisions, they're like, no, I don't want that. Is that really going to take that long? And then we edit that and then we can come back. It's all kind of part of the proposal process. And then once we kind of bring a client on and we've signed them, we go in and we look at all the integrations and like all the stuff they need to hand over to us basically to make it work. And we get them to like approve that. That is pretty much it. And then we're off to the races.
In that initial discovery phase, are you doing any type of UX mockup for the client?
Yeah, sometimes we can. I don't know that we do it every time, unless it depends on how clear of a picture they have of their app, basically. If they need that, uh, I think it helps. Um, and again, like my clients, it kind of filtered for functionality. And so not so much consumer apps as B2B or internal apps for their own company. So
Mm.
they're really focused on functionality more so than the mockups are really useful as a selling tool, even just to sync up and make sure you're on the same page. Um, but yeah, most of them are focused on functionality.
Gotcha. But I like the focus up front on making sure you're super clear on the requirements. This is another tip that I typically have for vibe coders is spend a good amount of time up front getting detailed about the features that you want, maybe even styling. I think there's just so much to gain from doing that and being opinionated about that up front before you jump into an AI assistant or an AI agent. Like and that could be like maybe spending some time with ChatGPT and flushing out these documents, like product requirement documents. I think in some sense, we're all becoming product managers now. And so if you do like a quick search on like, oh, what are the requirements that a product manager would need for a new feature, a new application? You have these terms like product requirements document, UX samples, workflow, success criteria, things like that. Like that's all. Those are best practices that I think everybody should start to develop as they're vibe coding their way to new projects.
Exactly. And I tell people like when I'm starting a new Replit, it's really important to do that back and forth with ChatGPT and get your database structure, your schema is what it's called, as explicit as you can get it, right? That'll save a lot of time. Um, and the other thing is access control. So being explicit, hey, we need a super admin that can do blah, blah, blah. We need an admin that can see this. We need a user that sees these screens. It's good to lay out all your screens if you can ahead of time. Like literally, I'm saying like each page that's going to be in your app. You don't have to do that every time, but it can be helpful.
And do you write that out, or are you already putting in UX samples and designs, or are you just writing that out in sort of like a markdown type of way or a written type of way?
I use Markdown. Well, I mean, actually, I think I get ChatGPT to where I like it, and then I dump that in a note and kind of edit it, and then I paste that into the Replit agent to start. I don't start with UX samples enough. That's a good little tip that you do. I think that can help, because if you think about AI as having like limited bandwidth, anytime you can save it on having to think about UI, which isn't trivial, but you can quickly, screenshot to provide an example or Figma or something else. Then it can focus more on like the business logic and making sure that's all locked down. It's one less thing for it to have to keep in its brain. Um, I think that's a valuable way to think about booting up apps.
Yeah, I found it helpful even for my own thinking to flush out my thinking on the
Yeah.
project, and it doesn't have to be super complicated. Like I guess like you can go to Figma and wireframe a whole bunch of things, but I found like if you go to any typical diagramming tool, and just building out the basics of the UX, where the buttons are and the different pages, the headlines, where the hero page is going, where you want a
Mm.
functionality, that's super helpful. Also, with the release of ChatGPT 4.0's new image generation model, some of the UX coming off of ChatGPT is really good. So if you go into ChatGPT and you use 4.0 and you say like, "Hey, draw me the landing page for this particular website," like recently I did something around organic marshmallows. I feel like me and my boys would be doing more outdoor stuff and got the s'mores and all that. I'm like, it'd be nice to have some organic marshmallows. I don't see that at the store. So I asked ChatGPT to design me a landing page for that, and it looked really good. And I just grabbed that and I just dropped it into Replit and I say like, okay, build me a whole website
Yeah,
based on this concept. And it just kind of it ripped like it gave me a really nice initial prototype.
that's a great way to do it. I've tried that once or twice, and yeah, 4.0 really ChatGPT's 4.0, I should say. It can make really good prototypes. Sometimes though, it'll put that gibberish AI text as placeholder though, and so you have to tell like Replit like, hey, like put real text in here. Don't do the gibberish made up words.
Yeah. That's helpful. That's better copy.
And to go back, the organic marshmallows sounds kind of like an oxymoron, like organic cigarettes to me. Like that's hilarious, you know?
Maybe that's why I don't see too many of them. Like it's probably hard to do organic marshmallows. So I'll have to do some more research on that. Awesome. So then at what point do you start working in Replit? So like you have a client, you've got the requirements all set up. At what point are you starting to develop a prototype in Replit?
Yeah. So I to kind of take a step back. I now that I'm thinking about it, when I am building an app, so I'm thinking of this from like a freelancer lens right now. With my
Mm.
agency, we'll start with the client, and I'll make a prototype in Replit, kind of at that first like week to kind of walk them through like, do you like this UX? Like, is this like how the flow, like how you envisioned it? But then my devs will build everything kind of from scratch using their like AI editor of choice. Maybe Replit may not. As a freelancer, I try to make an MVP for them, so I have something to show them on like the first discovery call if I can. And so I'm thinking this is from like an Upwork perspective. Like if I've landed a call from like an Upwork person who wants something built, I try to have something for them on that call. Um, and so yeah, I'll prototype something in Replit and be like, do you like this? And depending on how good the prototype is, I might just keep going off that original one. If it's too far from like what their vision is, I might just start from scratch in Replit. And like I said, we get that requirements document and kind of just feed it into Replit and make sure try to be as explicit as you can with the schema and the access control.
That's gotta make quite the first impression if you're showing up to that initial call with something that's functional, clickable, and that's maybe like 80% of the way there and maybe directionally like 100% spot on. Like that's got to give you like a major edge over everybody else trying to land the same deal.
It definitely does, and it's it's that a lot of people may not appreciate like how difficult that task is because they're not like engineers. The thing that people really like, and this is like sales 101, is that it's custom to them and then it has their brand and it flatters them in their brand and it doesn't look like everyone else's. Even if you're using the same components as everyone else, it's theirs. I think that's one of the really like the most powerful kind of sales feature of Replit.
It's got a wow to it, that really leaves a great impression with a prospect, like, for sure. Like, "Oh, you put my brand on here, it's got my it's branded with my colors, and it looks and feels like with something that I like and I would use, and it's super tailored to what I asked for in the job description."
Yeah, I think, and so I made my agency's landing page with Replit, which is like crazy because I was like, is this over engineering? Like, just a simple landing page? Like, shouldn't I just like code one or like use Webflow or something? But I was like, I'm gonna let Replit do it, and it like one shot made an incredible agency landing page. And so if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now and building like custom apps for business owners, I would be spinning up landing pages for like every local business and then sending them like looms or calling them and saying, hey, I made this, because you can just update all of their business websites and make them so much better, just using something like Replit to quickly make a landing page. It's nuts. I think you could do a good job selling that kind of product to local businesses. I think the one thing that I haven't solved kind of in my mind is how to sell them on using a self-hosted custom solution versus like a Webflow or Squarespace or a Wix. Because I think they're apprehensive about, okay, now this guy has control over my website, and they feel like that's kind of like a threat or like something where it can go wrong. Um, I think like it's important, if I were to do this, is tell them like you shouldn't be spending time like on your website fiddling with it. Like the way with AI now, like it's very affordable for you to have me do it and then just pay me to update it as you need. I'm actually like saving you from headaches from you trying to do stuff yourself. I think it's important for you just to focus like on like your customers and your business, right?
What a great tip. No, so, like, that suggestion, I just wanna double click on that because
Yeah.
I think it's a really good one around, like, if you're looking for, like, a side gig, like, check out your local area shops, and then look at their website, build something better on Replit, and then just send that to them, and it's easy to deploy, and just kind of, like, to send them that link and say, like, "Hey, like, check out what I was able to build for you, like, if you wanna learn more about this, and how to, like, have access to this at a super affordable rate, let's talk." That conversion rate's gotta be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's low hanging fruit because there's so many businesses that are like, we haven't changed our website since 2005. It's just like a marketing site. And
Right.
in the past, they would be like, oh, we don't want to spend the money because like, we're like a family office, right? Like people aren't learning about us and converting from our website. But so they're not going to want to change from their 2005 website. But if you come through with something really great that's custom to them and affordable, they might be like, yeah, like this is so much better. We'll do it.
I also really like that from the perspective of the agency owner because it's a great way to de-risk the build. In my past life as a AI a developer and agency owner, one of the problems was around the scope creep and committing to something that ultimately was not feasible.
Yep.
And I think that, if you can build something really quickly, you can at least get a sense of what the feasibility for that is going to be moving forward. So it really helps you de-risk your own your own ability to deliver on the expectations of that prospect.
That's a great point. Being able to de-risk up to like your skill level is like really important, and like realizing that. And that's why I kind of try to hammer home like my agency is stupid simple apps. Like we focus on apps that do like one or two things really well. If you're kind of in between like landing page and like full apps, like just basic CRUD apps that's like data entry and like display or visualization, that's a really easy way to de-risk because it's just a database and a front end, right?
I think you touched on this earlier, but then once you sell a client and you build something for them, what is your handing off process look like? Are you? Yeah, you mentioned there one option would be to for you to continue to manage the application and you just service it, and maybe there's sort of some sort of service agreement moving forward on that. But are there instances where you're just handing over the code and you're having them hosted on their own servers, or are you handing over the Replit to them for them to manage? How do you think about the delivery part of the process?
Yeah. So the answer overwhelmingly is people do not want the code. They don't want to worry about the code. They don't care what
Right.
server it's on. They want you to do it for them. And if you, big skill in all of this is picking good clients. And if you're good about filtering for good clients, you'll have ones that, they're doing enough revenue that they can afford to pay you just to worry about it for them. Those are the clients that you want. Um, I always say, like, don't sell solutions. Like, you want to sell decisions to people. Like, I'm going to pick for you, like, here's where we're going to host it, and it's going to work like this. Just, I'll send you a bill. Like, those are the perfect kinds of clients. I know that's easier said than done. But I think anytime you are in like a sales process and people are tire kicking about intellectual property or making sure like that you have the code, they have the code, and you're completely locked out, like those are kind of red flags, where it might get difficult to hand over. So yes, usually we will host. We're getting to some clients, like bigger clients that are doing like less stupid simple apps and want kind of enterprise like multi-tenant solutions and stuff like that. So that'll be probably more of a formal handover. Um,
Mm.
that'll be a different, that's a way bigger scope of a project. But yeah, most of the time. But if we wanted to hand over the code, and we do this, I just don't think there's any chance they'll ever go to the GitHub. But we'll send them like a link to the GitHub, an invite to the GitHub. I usually give just a document where it has a loom of me walking through the app and using it, and then I take that transcript and turn it into like either like an SOP or like a features list that lists all the pages and how they work. And then I put like, here's a link to the GitHub, here's a link to the Replit, and you can invite them to that Replit, and then they can have access to the code if they really want to. Most people don't.
Any other tips on the product management side, on the prototyping side that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, I think just emphasizing like the de-risk part, and it's if you're new and you're like vibe coding, or you're just new to kind of sales and agency stuff in general, like the client's gonna ask and ask and ask for like everything in the world that they want, like nice to haves. So you have to kind of cut out those nice to haves and be like, this is what V1 of this looks like. This is what the MVP is. This is what we need to build. Everything else is going to incur more cost and stop us from getting you to your solution. Um, and that's okay. Some clients want the full thing the first time, but I think with software development now, you need to get to like, you can get to an MVP quickly. And then once you get to that, your client's going to go, oh, well, maybe we don't need to go down this route. So it's going to save you time in the long run to iterate quickly versus trying to lop off a bunch of features at one time.
Yeah, absolutely. Focusing on that must-have killer feature right out of the gate. Where's the most value? I think it's also important to spend time with the client, because to your point, like you want to, to make your life easier, you want to filter out the bad uh, customers, and sometimes it's hard to filter that out in an initial discovery discussion. Sometimes you need to work with someone for a little bit on a project and see what that feels like, and then thereafter decide like, okay, yeah, now we want to continue this relationship. Let's start building out all this additional stuff on top of that. So, also an opportunity just to feel out the relationship before you commit any to more features and more work.
The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to use like external APIs or services for features in your app. You shouldn't reinvent the wheel in a lot of cases. And you can tell your client, like, hey, like, we don't need our own SMTP server. We're going to use Mailgun or whatever. There's a ton of examples like that where you probably should just use a different service. But you can be upfront and tell them, like, this is what it'll probably cost you, but it'll save me 20 hours of dev time if I were to do this from scratch. And I think a lot of people don't understand. They're like, well, I want to make sure I own all of the code and can like resell it. Well, a lot of enterprise software uses other little softwares and APIs to make it run under the hood because they know people are these people are experts in, email or authentication or payments, right? Like Stripe, like you should use something like Stripe. You shouldn't try to do, I don't even know how you would code payments by yourself, right? So don't be afraid. Don't think of them as like shortcuts, but think of them as like a robust time saving solution that's worth integrating.
Absolutely. I think to your point, you want to move fast, and you want to get that strong signal that you're building something of tremendous value for your end customer. And oftentimes what I found is like these customers don't really care about the tech stack. They just care about the functionality and what's happening. And if you sit down and you say like, oh, like, I'm doing my own self-hosted LLM and I'm doing all this like, cool, interesting things, and this is what it does. They're like, okay, but what does it do? Like, oh, like it easily summarizes all of the calls you've had with this prospect. He's like, okay, cool, that's what I care about. Like, I don't care how you did that. Just like make sure that I have access to that in the application.
It,
So oftentimes I think it's us like overcomplicating things
yeah,
like, oh, would it be cool for me like to build this out on my own? Like, yeah, maybe later, like after you have a well-established customer base and you can really see that it's worthwhile to go out and build something DIY and like really bring it in-house. But early on, like you just want to get to that, killer feature set and get and start generating tremendous value for that prospect and that customer.
and it's kind of the middle curve meme where like the best clients are either the ones who are don't so non-technical that they're like you just do everything, or so super technical that they're like you just make the decisions. I don't want to get in the weeds and slow you up. Sometimes someone's in the middle, like they know a little bit about coding or technology. That's when you get into the they care about like what you used to do it. But you're right, 99% of the time people don't care how you get the job done. I think the only time they would is if they're really concerned about owning all the code and being like, this is my IP. Like, I think you need, I think that's something I've had to bring up before. Like, hey, like this is still your code and your product. Tons of products use other integrations. So that's kind of why I brought that up.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's reassuring for folks. Like, hey, if you wanted to, we can ship all the code to
Yeah.
you tomorrow, no problem, and well documented. We'll help you integrate it and everything. But like, yeah, it's just going to be easier for us to host it for you, and deliver the service that you want.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about any custom applications or workflows that you're building to manage your own business, like internal tools, operation wise?
Yeah, I use a lot of automations in like N8N or make.com to just help me with like calendar stuff, following up and sending people like resources after I do a call with them. Um, I use I guess the answer really is I don't build stuff for myself. I only build stuff for people who pay me usually, because it just and I think with Replit, like I need to take a break over a weekend and be like, okay, like here's what my workday looks like. I can use Replit to make all this stuff faster. Um, but right now, yeah, I just kind of make tools for clients and try to use existing features for myself, so that I don't have to maintain um, a whole new app for every little workflow thing I want, right? Not that it's difficult. It's just like I try to just only code when people pay me. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. Yeah, absolutely. You're probably so busy with the inbound stuff that you're just like getting those in and working on that
So
and
I'm like
delivering
happy to
stuff.
pay $70 a month for a pipe drive instead of trying to make my own CRM, which I've done in the past. I made my own custom CRMs, but then I find a bug or like a feature that I want to change myself, and then it's just context breaking. Oh, I got to go edit this CRM that I'm working on, right? Um, like you said with Chrome extensions, I think that would save me a ton of time. I see the value there. I actually do have some examples of ones I use. So um, I write a local newsletter called the Arlington Bagel for my county, and it's got like events and like restaurant reviews in it. And I was spending a lot of time, and my writer spending a lot of time gathering news stories and then turning them like into our stylized blurbs. But it's the same thing every time. It's like headline, here's where the event is, here's the time, here's like a description, and here's where you can get tickets. And so I don't know if I used Replit or Cursor for this, but I made a Slack app. If it just sits in our channel, it's like a Slack bot. It uses ChatGPT, and you put in a URL, and it turns it into a blurb. And you can click a button that says, "Oh, this should really be like a blurb versus like an event," and then it'll change like the style of it, and then you can just copy paste that right into. We use Beehive. I also made a using AI Beehive dashboard where if you have multiple publications, newsletters. So like I have my Beehive. I also manage newsletters for clients, for startups. And so you can see in one dashboard like the growth of all of those, which is, so I'm sure they'll add that to Beehive in the future. But it has a cool leaderboard so people can compare where their newsletters are.
That makes sense with Beehive. Like they probably have some API that you can ping and then pull in all of your relevant newsletters and details and have it all in one place. But that goes back to our earlier point of like if there is a feature in an existing product that isn't there that you want, try to build it out in Replit or in an AI with an AI tool and try to like make it your own and host it and instead of waiting for the product to integrate it.
Yeah. And I think kind of when you asked about like how you use tool, how do you build tools to run your business? Like that gets into like productivity apps, which like in CRMs and stuff, and it's really hard to get those right. You kind of it's you can only use so much software to make yourself productive, right? You need to find what works for you. And I don't I it's hard to just start with a blank slate and be like, I'm going to build this and it's going to be more productive. So that's why I try to be kind of fluid and just kind of use tools that are already set and see which ones work the best.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, to your point, you mentioned tools like make .com. I use similar types of workflow orchestration tools. One of my recent workflows that I did is where I built out a workflow that when I get a new contact, I'm automatically able to do some research on them, pull in context,
Yeah,
LinkedIn URL, a quick bio, like anything they've written or any interviews that they've done, and drop that into Notion.
that's awesome.
And the workflow itself is orchestrated with a tool called Pipedream that's similar to Zapier. But then for the heavy duty research, like the going out and scraping the web and then taking all of that and summarizing it and putting it all in its respective schema, JSON schema, that's all done in Replit with a Replit hosted server that I can hit via API.
Nice.
And so it's nice to have like the workflow set up because these workflow tools do a great job of integrating with a whole bunch of different
Yeah.
applications. So whether that's Notion, email, Slack, you can do that in a tool like Pipedream or Zapier. But then when you need some heavy duty intelligence that's maybe somewhat customized, you can set that up in Replit and have it be accessible via API
Huh.
into these
That's
workflows.
so cool. So I kind of do the inverse of that with like workflows,
Oh,
and I'll do kind of the business logic and the integrations and make or innate in, and then use Replit for the front end that kind of logs progress and you can manually fire. Um, we do some automations for clients. I have an automation engineer. And so what we do is build them these automations and then build a front end in Replit that literally ticks up every time it's used and says, this saved you $20. This saved you 30 minutes of time, right? So it can really visualize these automations. And once you've got that automation laid out and you find that it's like useful, then you can add more of the business logic into Replit to save you money on like API calls and or just using different services, right? So I think it's a really useful prototyping kind of workflow is do the business logic and automations to just show that you can do something, right? And that all these integrations work and that it's useful, and then try to code as much of it as you can in Replit once you've got it figured out.
awesome. We're gonna do part two of our interview. And what we were thinking there was you walking us through your workflow of um, going out to Upwork and looking for different types of opportunities. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a preview for that.
Yeah, I've never ever told anyone about this, so you're gonna want to stick around. No, I'm kidding. I've told people about this before, but it's super actionable, and it's bizarre, man. After I've kind of talked about this Upwork strategy with Replit, I'm getting DMs of people who are like, dude, I just sold an app for $8,000. Someone DM me like, I'm about to finish one for $30,000, and I'm like, dude, what? And I'll like tweet about those kinds of things, and they're unbelievable, but I think it just points to if you're in the right place and you have good ideas and you find a burning hot problem, you can make an app that addresses that and sell it in 2 days. And I think this is a good way to get started. So I think you'll want to hear about this strategy.
Definitely. We're gonna have that episode out next week, so definitely tune in for that. In the meantime, Billy, anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
I would cover, I'm not an official Replit shill. It truly is that useful for me. And I really do think it's democratizing for people with ideas or people that are non-technical, or even people that are technical and want to iterate at speed and learn. It really is like amazing. It's crazy.
I think it's night and day. I think for you and me who have learned coding the hard way, it's just like amazing. It's just amazing how much faster you can get started and how much easier it is, how much less pain there is now in not only learning to code and to program, but also into shipping things that's actually functional and usable. Like it used to be that it would take you a long time to actually stand something up that you can use. Like it's one thing to learn the
Yep.
basics of coding and how to like write in
Yeah.
Python, or I did R back in the day. How to do that. But then it was a long time before you could actually get something up and running that you would use on a daily basis or that was of value to someone. And now you can do that in a day. You can do that. You start from scratch and you can get something that's actually valuable and usable for you. And tools like Replit, I mean, I think that that just really kind of have turbocharged that. It's amazing to me.
And this will be like my last thing. I'll end on this. The way it's just like amazing how being able to dictate into software, right? Turn your words and ideas into a functioning code. It's amazing how it unlocks things. The other day, I was fiddling with one page like proposal for a client in like Figma that I wanted to be pretty, and I'm dragging stuff around and I got to center this and resize this, and I was like, wait, code would do this automatically because everything's responsive and dynamic. So I went into Replit and I was like, hey, turn this into a one-page proposal and put it on my agency website, and it did it in like 5 minutes. And so I was able to code and deploy a new web page quicker than I was able to drag and drop and create a PDF. It's mind blowing.
Billy, tell people how they can get in touch with you. How can they follow your work?
Yeah, Billy J Howell on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. I have a lot of YouTube tutorials on Replit and how to use it to sell apps. Tweet about the same kinds of things. My agency is stupidsimpleapps.com. There's hyphens in there. So if you ever want, if you want to just like, you have an app idea that you want built, I'm happy to sit on a call with you. And then do offer like strategy calls with people on teaching them my process. I just kind of brain dump for an hour. So you can find all that on my Twitter, but that's kind of what I'm working on.
Awesome. I like the name Stupid Simple Apps. It's, straightforward, get to the point.
Yeah.
I always say that I give credit to Potbellies because you know what you're gonna get there, right? Like you go there, it's a fast food place. I don't know if you have Potbellies in
We
Arlington,
do.
but like, they're gonna tell you, you keep eating here, you're gonna get a Potbelly over time. So I like that truth in advertising, so to speak.
That's good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Billy. Looking forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much.
Yep. Cheers, Manny.